Hi, everyone. You are joined this evening for a special topics webinar by the UNC MPA program. We are going to talk today about military service and the decision to go back and get the MPA. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kara Robinson, and our very special guest tonight is Michael Sims, who is a current student in the on-campus format of the MPA program. Hi, Mike.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Do you want to kind of briefly introduce yourself and maybe let us know where you're from, where you got undergrad degree?
Okay, yeah. So again, Mike Sims, originally from Norfolk, Virginia, was a military brat. So several different duty stations. And then my dad finished his career at Fort Story, and we were living in the Richmond area. So after I finished high school, I went to Virginia Commonwealth University right there in Richmond, where I got to attend the ROTC program, enjoyed that. And I'm accompanied here right now with my wife, and we have a baby girl on the way in a few months.
Yay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, and he is a current second year student in the program. So he will be getting ready to graduate here in, oh my gosh, is it 6 months away, 7 months?
8 months.
8 months, not that you're counting. So talk about your interests, like what areas of public administration are you interested in?
So really looking at all of them. I think after this summer, I'm really focused on local government. I don't want to badmouth any of the other areas, but really being down there where you actually get to see the people, see the impacts you're making. When you make a decision, whether it's to fix a street, to approve a development project, not only do you get to see it get done in real time, you can see the impacts that it has on people. So not to say that the federal or state or nonprofits don't have that impact, but I feel like at local government is really where you get to see the work being done.
It's so true. It's such a, I don't think a lot of people know about the area of local government, or they don't really know how much it directly impacts the communities. And at least for me, it was really eye-opening seeing it all happen during COVID, because it was a perfect example of, vaccine distributions and, I don't know, equity issues and access and things like that, the education.
I think originally when you look at the budget of the federal government, I think, first glance, I assume that the federal government does everything, but when you look at how that money is actually dispersed, and a lot of that's pushed down to the state and local governments, because it's hard for, just the federal government to say what's going to affect every local government. And I mean, even in North Carolina, the coastal region is different from the mountain region, which is different from the triangle. So you really got to put that onus on local governments to make the best decision for their own communities.
Exactly. And different communities have different needs, like you said. So decision makers in local government. Well, thank you guys for joining us tonight. This webinar really was inspired because our student population, we have about 160 MPA students who are either online or on campus, and about 20% of them, between 17% and 20%, are military affiliated, or they are the spouses of military members, or they have veteran status. And this is obviously a huge area for us, because I think just naturally the transition between military and public administration is it's palpable. People understand it, and it's part of kind of what you have dedicated your military service for, and extending that to the field of public service and public administration. So we like to hold these webinars just to, I think, speak about the military or the student experience from someone that has a military background. And Mike is one of those students, so he's going to kind of share his perspective tonight. Mike, do you want to talk about, I know you said you were in like ROTC. Can you kind of talk, it sounds like it has been in your background as well. You grew up with a father who was in the military, but how did you personally make this decision
Yes, I can tell you, growing up, my mom was in the military for just a few years, I think 4 years. Then my dad spent, 20 plus years in the military and retired as a first sergeant. I have a brother that's 2 years older than me, and he attended Virginia State University where he was in the ROTC program. And growing up with all the movement, I told myself I'd never join the military. Um, I will never admit to my brother that I was following in his footsteps, but seeing what a good experience he was having with ROTC, applied for the scholarship, got it coming out of high school, and said, hey, let me give it a shot. If I don't like it, I can rescind my scholarship and pay for school like I normally would. But I started ROTC and I really loved it. So did my 4 years of ROTC, commissioned as a second lieutenant, and then got my first assignment at Fort Bragg. I started off as a transportation officer. Spent my first 4 years as a transportation officer at Fort Bragg with the 82nd Airborne Division. Made captain. And really, I asked my wife every time it's time for me to move or time for me to get promoted, if she's willing to continue to ride it out. And fortunately for me, she's a nurse. And she's been willing to travel with me every step of the way so far. So really have enjoyed my military experience. And I think the MPA program has given me a chance to both, further my education and advance my career. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So how did you kind of decide to pursue another degree? I mean, it sounds like you're very busy. You have a full-time job. Yeah, so how did that decision come up and how did it work out for you to go back to school?
So I think around, 4 years in to the military, I was starting to look at, getting another degree. It's a pivotal time where I was deciding, do I want to go to the captain's career course and commit to another 3 or 4 years in the military? Do I want to get out early? I thought about trying to be a professor and going back and get my doctorate early in my career, but I really didn't know what I wanted to study at that point. So I kind of pushed it down the road and pushed it down the road. And what really gave me the tipping point was at about 5 years into my career, I found out about an opportunity to continue to serve in the military as a professor and get my master's degree through West Point. And so through ACS in the military, they said, hey, well, if you get accepted, we'll fully fund a graduate degree. You'll go to school for 2 years. And I'll say, before coming here, I finished company command. I was company commander for the 149th Seaport Operations Company, which is out of Fort Eustis, Virginia. Very unique for, 99% of the military has never heard of it. It's a vessel downloading company. So we got to travel around the world and download vessels. So very busy time. And I didn't think at that point I would have, an opportunity to do an online program or I thought I would struggle with an online program. So I decided to use the West Point option. I was accepted through that program. And then West Point said, apply to some schools and we'll see where you go from there.
So how did you, you still didn't know exactly what you wanted to do at this point. How did you come across the MPA and talk about your, it sounded like you probably looked at all different options when deciding where to go back to grad school because you had this amazing opportunity to be supported while you went to grad school. So talk about that and how did you land on the MPA?
So I kind of talk about it through, the degree and then the school. So through the degree, I really narrowed it down to kind of 3 degrees I wanted to get. It was a master's in business administration, a master's in public policy, or a master's in public administration. So I think the MBA was what everybody was getting at the time. I talked to, some of my peers. My best friend was also in the military. He's currently finishing up his MBA. But when I really sat down and thought about, a business, there's a lot you can do with an MBA. It just wasn't where my interest aligned at. I think like I said, I wanted to get back into local government. I enjoyed not only writing policy, but I thought, could I write policy at the federal level, go work in DC? And that's when I started originally looking at the MPP. But when I looked at the MPP versus the MPA, really the difference for me was, did I want to go work somewhere in DC and work writing policy? And I said, I went to a seminar for, I'll say their name. I went to a seminar for Duke in DC, and one of the students who had just graduated talked about how much fun she had working, not in the Pentagon, but in the building next to the Pentagon. All she did was, watch the news and write policy all day. And that just didn't appeal to me, because you're sitting in DC, you're actually seeing what those policies are. And so I look at the MPA, specifically UNCs that specialized in nonprofits and local government. That's just where my background was at. I spent a lot of time working with the Red Cross through high school and college, and then early in my military career. And then during my time at Fort Bragg, I worked with a nonprofit called Great Oaks, and just had a phenomenal experience working with African-American children raised by single parents. And so that's really where I saw, two different levels where nonprofits play a huge role. And so then it came time to, pick a school. And I looked at a couple of different schools. It was really Georgetown, Duke, and UNC. I was fortunate to get admitted to all three of them. But looking at UNC, I said, okay, what positives can I get at UNC that I can't get at other schools? And really, one of the biggest for me was the class sizes for the in-person or on-campus cohort. I think the admittance is usually around 30 a year. And I can say from my undergrad experience, I can't name any of my colleagues or any of my professors, because VCU just had a huge criminal justice program. So I wanted something where, I could feel like I belonged. And that's really been, come to fruition since I've been here. And then again, they specialize in local government. And I can talk about my experience with local government as we continue the seminar.
Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, it's really one of the biggest things I always try to articulate is what the MPA is compared to other degrees. And people think it's so similar to an MPP, and it's really not. In the leadership aspects, it actually makes the degree more similar to an MBA than anything else, except obviously the difference is the MBA is going to kind of set you up to do that corporate minded, cost benefit, how to save money, make money kind of decisions. And I know that extends into the public sector as well, but the lens of the MPA and the leadership skill set that you gain from the MPA, it's through the perspective of people who are knowledgeable about governments and how they make decisions and how they run efficiently and effectively. And then the MPP, I kind of always, someone told me once, one of our faculty members, Dr. Carl Stenberg, mentioned that he likes to think of the MPP as being kind of behind the scenes, like those are the people who are taking the data, taking the subsets, doing the research and suggesting the policy. And it's the MPA people who are like the forefront of the community. They are taking those policies and they are implementing it. They are making the decisions that are going to directly affect the community. So it sounds like, kind of from your perspective, that you figured out that's what you wanted to do. You wanted to have your feet in the boots, be on the ground in the community.
Exactly. I think from my time in the military, some people may shy away from it, but I enjoy, having my feet held to the fire, being accountable and being the one who makes the decision and having to stand by it. And that's really where I felt the MPA would continue to allow me to be in that leadership role and make decisions in the community.
Well, we're really glad you chose UNC. I knew you had been accepted to Duke, but I did not know you got accepted to Georgetown as well. And I know those are two very good programs, so we're really glad you're with us.
I'm glad I'm here as well.
So I guess next question is kind of around your experience in the MPA. Let's get into what this program has offered you and sort of afforded you. And yeah, so maybe talk about, I guess, what have you thought about the program so far, and like, what have you like gained from it?
So I can say, going back to the small class sizes that really helped me in my first year was, it had been 7, almost 8 years since I've taken a college course. So though I, did some writing, I hadn't done any formal research in a long time. And I shared with my classmates, but I had a lot of trouble doing citations. It was a different style. We were doing legal citations. But what I can say is every professor, because classes were so small, I could use office hours, and they, spend an hour with me saying, okay, Chicago style, here's how you do it. That's just something I wasn't used to. I thought it was going to be, a lot of my classmates were, fresh out of undergrad, and writing citations was no big deal to them. To me, I knew what a citation was, but I couldn't format one. So that was extremely helpful. Again, in my research class, I'd never done like my own formal research. Just, hey, go study a topic, and having to go find your own resources and do an annotated bibliography was a foreign language to me. And Professor Berner said, hey, on a Saturday, if you're available, I'm available. And literally went through the UNC library with me and showed me how to do it. And so, took that, the other resources like the military veterans center here. And I went there when I first got here. And they put me on with the writing boot camp. And so, not being afraid of saying, hey, I don't know how to do something, people actually here can take your time. And when I walk around, the building, it's, hey, Mike. People know who I am and will stop at having conversation and ask about my wife. And I just don't think at, some of these schools with, 100, 200 people in there are going to know who you are walking around the building. Or when you walk into class, remember something you said a month ago. The director of the program, Dr. Jacobson, I was speaking about a week ago to her, and she brought up something I said in my interview for the program to even get accepted, which was, I don't know, 16, 17 months ago. And I was like, well, hopefully it was something good. And luckily it was. But I just don't think you get that type of one-on-one experience at any other school. And then there's other resources that just the university as a whole offers to the veterans. I spoke about the Veterans Center, where you can go over there and meet other veterans. It gives you a space to get out the house. But then they also offer, other writing seminars and budgeting classes and stuff that are available to veterans. So.
Thank you so much. And I'm really glad you mentioned that, like, just from military's perspective alone, like one of the things we always try to highlight about our program, which is really hard to articulate, is that we have dedicated staff. Like we have a very small program, and we offer like individualized support, exactly like you gave reference to. And I feel like sometimes people hear that and they're like, oh yeah, so does everyone else. Because that's what everyone said, right? Like everyone's like, we will give you individualized attention and things like that. And so I'm really glad you brought that up as multiple examples, because you're exactly right. I promise it's not something you're going to get at other programs. And I think our staff, like our career person, our professional work experience coordinator, our academic advisor, and our faculty, they just like really care about the development of our students. And our end goal is to get you in a career that you're happy about and in a job you're happy about, and where you're actually being a decision maker, like, in some capacity.
Yeah, one thing I'll say, Elizabeth, during the admissions process, because I'm still active duty, there was quite a bit of paperwork and memos that I needed signed a certain way. And there were a couple of them, I think it was like 2 of them that got kicked back, a day or 2 before, the final date. And I felt so bad, but I reached out to Elizabeth and said, hey, I'm sorry, this is, the 2nd or 3rd time you got to sign this, but can you sign it for me, and you make these 2 changes? And I'm within 10 minutes of emailing her, she had it back to me. And I think she called me back and said, hey, is there anything else I can do for you? And I was like, man, I was expecting, you to make me, read me the riot act for sending you this and saying I need it back right away. But just, nothing I've asked for, has ever seemed like a burden, and they've been more than happy to help me. So been truly appreciative for that.
Good. And then I know that we have like a professional work experience that's required as part of this program. Do you want to briefly touch on that, just because I know it has kind of impacted you and maybe helped give you an idea of like what you want to do in the future? Can you maybe talk about that and maybe how it, like how you got it and how it has helped shaped what you see yourself doing in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. And please stop me because I can get really excited when I talk about my PWE experience. So,
Oh, and just for the record, anyone listening, PWE stands for professional work experience. I already said that, but everyone in our program refers to it as PWE, so you'll hear it all the time.
So when applying to the program, I knew there was a PWE requirement, but just like anything else you see on the curriculum, didn't really ask a whole lot of questions about it. I would say in about November of my first semester, Allison and Kristen started bringing it up a little bit more, and we actually had, I want to say maybe an hour or 2 hour sit down where they really explained to us what it was, what the goals of it were, and what was super helpful for me is they set up interviews. So having been in the military, I haven't had a job outside of the military since being a tutor in college. So although I've done some small interviews for jobs in the military, I had to interview for command. But other than that, there wasn't any formal interviews. So I sat down with actually a budget analyst, a previous alum for Durham, North Carolina, and she critiqued my interview skills. I thought I had prepared by, Googling some stuff, but she gave me some really good pointers on you need to look up the budget. You're interviewing for a budget position, so you should probably know what's in the budget, or at least have an idea of it. So little things like that I just hadn't thought of. So again, the program itself sent out a list, I think it was in Excel, of all the different opportunities. I won't say all of them, a good listing of opportunities, but the program also allows you, if you have an interest in something, to go out and get your own, or you kind of design your own PWE experience. I found one with the town of Chapel Hill, working for the manager's office, used some of those skills I had learned from the interview and reviewed the budget before I did that sit down interview. But I got accepted to be the town manager's intern. So knowing that I wanted to get in the local government, or thinking I wanted to get into local government, this PWE experience really solidified that for me. I got to meet the town manager of Chapel Hill. I went to every meeting with him for 10 weeks. And really it was such a cool insight to, I had never really sat in town hall, for fun. Now I was required to go to them, take notes, and to be able to see, development projects go from, nothing, an idea that somebody brought up, a citizen brought up in the community, to the planning department, developing it, to the town manager taking it to council approving it. It was really cool to see. And that was just one aspect of it. I got to work with working for the town manager's office was also interesting because you got to work with the HR department. I got to work with the budget department as they approved the budget for Chapel Hill. And so it was something like the budget's interesting because, you take the finance course and you think you know what the budget is, some of the stuff is kind of hypothetical. And then you pass your final, and the next week you're in the real world working on the budget for a town. So I will say that, most of the programming, there was several MPA alums in the town of Chapel Hill. And so it wasn't the intern experience that I thought I was going to be there making copies and stuff like that. Like, no, they give you real world projects and you go work on them for the town. So I love my experience on my PWE.
Good, that's so good. We have heard many times before where someone has done a PWE and they're like, it actually helped me realize what I don't want to do. Yep. Because maybe they just, maybe they wanted to work for a nonprofit and then change their mind, or maybe it wasn't the right fit nonprofit or whatever. But it really does kind of help inform what you do and don't want in the real world. Mm-hmm. So how would you say it shaped what do you see yourself doing in the future? Like, did you really like the manager's office? Do you like the more budget finance side? Do you see yourself staying in local government?
So I do. And I think even, wanting to work for a local government, I kind of played with the idea of, elected official, running for council or something at some point. But after doing this, the MPA experience is, yeah, the elected officials, vote on what the constituents want. But the manager's office and, the planners and stuff, I want to work in the manager's office. I hope to one day be a town manager, do the work. They come up with the ideas, they present, different courses of action to the council, and then the council makes the final decision. But I enjoy being a part of that planning process. And there's some things that, don't necessarily do in the military that they have to do here, like budgeting, unless you're in a specific job. But working in the manager's office, you get to do it all. So yeah, I hope to one day be a town manager and work in a manager's office.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Next question is and I don't mean to stump you with this one, but I think you'll be able to think of something. What has been the most surprisingly positive thing about your experience in the program, or maybe something that you were unsure of, or maybe, even like a class that you thought you would hate and you liked, or something.
So something that was surprising to me and just much different than anything I experienced in undergraduate were the realistic assignments. So, two examples I can give is, I took a legal course, which was phenomenal, but it wasn't hypotheticals. I mean, you were reading Supreme Court case studies, and I promise it's more interesting than it sounds on front. And then having to analyze it and understanding, what the Supreme Court justices were saying, and then how does it impact, us today, something that happened 100 years ago or 20 years ago, or, 5 years ago. And now I can actually, open up, a local government statutes. And I mean, I would still find a lawyer to advise me before making a decision, but I can understand what a lot more that means, because it's not theoretical, like it's realistic. And then the research class, again, talking about realistic expectations before starting that class. I mean, the most I probably knew about research was qualitative versus quantitative data. And by the end of it, I mean, I did a research project where I interviewed around 30 folks on something I was interested in. The professor kind of guides you, but, a month in, they ask you, what do you want to do research on? And it's not just local government. It's not just nonprofits. It's what do you want to do research on? And again, I had some background with African-American children raised by single parents, and that's the nonprofit I worked for. And that's what I did my research on. And it was something I was passionate about. And I think I'm even more passionate about it after, researching that for a year. And I think, the professors really do help guide you, but you got to figure out some of that stuff on your own. And I enjoy that.
Good. So it's not, yes. Well, I'm glad you kind of touched on that too, because it's definitely not an easy program. Mm-hmm. We tell our students all the time, like it's a lot of work, but people, they enjoy it because, like you said, you're learning like real things that are affecting, our governments and our communities. So, I guess we'll wrap up with one more question. And it's going to be what advice do you have for, someone who might watch this down the line and who might be in similar shoes, as you, and thinking about kind of what next and how to, what to do and whether to go back to school? Like, what advice do you have for people who are considering graduate school / the MPA?
Yes, I think, graduate school has a lot of things. I think I took 4 years before I started graduate school after I started thinking about it. One way I think about it is, try to decide or have an idea of what you want to do in the end before you go back and get another degree that, you may or may not use. So if you know what your interests are, and I already had, an interest in local government, so this degree kind of solidified that versus coming back to get a degree, to hang it on the wall. But when you're thinking MPA, one thing that I'll say really helped, and you talked about, being similar to maybe an MBA, but I think if you walked away with nothing else, you're gonna be a better public speaker. I mean, almost every class, somebody's getting up there and you're either leading class or you're leading a lecture, doing a summary of the weekly's readings. So I think I'm a much better public speaker. I've spoken in front of groups before. When I was a company commander, I had over 200 soldiers that I spoke in front of weekly. I would say it's different giving a closeout formation brief than it is reading the news on what topic just came out or what's hot in the press and trying to summarize that to your class. And then writing. I would say one of my favorite things about the program is in undergrad, I felt like I always struggled to write more. All the assignments said, 10 pages or more, 20 pages or more. I don't think I've had an assignment in graduate school over 5 pages. And I would say most of them are closer to 2 to 3 pages. So it's not how long you can write. It's realistic. If you're going to hand a manager or a mayor, or even if you worked at the federal government, you want to hand something to a congresswoman or a state senator or something like that, you're not going to hand them this 20-page report. You got to get it in a memo. It's got to be formatted correctly, and it's got to be 2 pages. And I've had so many struggles that I'll start writing, and I write some of the way I talk, where I can go on a little bit. And I've had to learn to be so concise. And you're reading through, and is this sentence important? Because I'm, a paragraph over. I got to take this sentence out here and take that sentence out there. And I think that is something that'll help you in the military. It'll help you, anywhere. You should becoming a better writer doesn't mean writing longer, writing more succinctly. So I think that's something that'll help, regardless of where you work. And I think you mentioned it a second ago, that it's not an easy program, and it's not. But I think about, with my internship, would I be able to leave if I wasn't in the military and go work for that local government and manager's office now? Maybe not quite yet. Hopefully in the next, 8 months when I graduate, I think I would be much better prepared versus, my undergraduate experience, where it really was hand holding. And, if you forgot an assignment, you get a reminder email, like, no, it's realistic here. And there's just a ton of opportunities. I'm working on a project now for the town of Apex with their HR department. And I worked on a project last year with the town of Cary and their awards program. And I mean, it's just a ton of realistic research and support, and working with, people who are actually doing this stuff on a day-to-day basis.
That's awesome. And probably something you may not have even realized. Well, you kind of mentioned it when you said the public speaking, but sounds like this program has given you a lot of confidence, like that you actually can work in a local government and help make decisions and take all the things that and actually apply them to a real life job one day. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention, and that you touched on, is just the skill sets that you've gained. And this is something I always try to articulate to students. It's, great if you want to go out there and get the MBA and, go work for corporate America or something like that. But the MPA, a lot of people think it's just for people who want to go work in the government, and it's not. I think a lot of our examples in class and a lot of our faculty expertise is in that. But this is a leadership toolkit that you will be able to take with you anywhere. Just like you mentioned, the public speaking skills and the writing skills that you've gained, like your, memos are across all different environments, whether you work in local government or whether you work in, a nonprofit or a private corporation. So I like to think of the MPA as sort of the MBA for people who want to contribute for people who want to impact their communities in some way. And so, yeah, so I wanted to mention that as well. And I think that's all we have.
I really appreciate you having me, and maybe I can change somebody's mind. I'll see them next year as an alum.
Mike, thanks so much for being a part of this and for giving your time tonight. I know you are super busy, and we value having you as part of our program. And to all of our future military leaders or military service members or veterans or family members who come into the program, we really do try and create a community that is inclusive and respectful of all that you have done to contribute thus far. So give us a call and, you know, talk more about the MPA. And Mike, I will talk to you soon, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
How do I stop recording? Here we go.